just so we can get just so we can grab it.
What's going on, everyone? Thanks for checking us out today. We have a special guest, John Olsen. He's the author of the new book, Stranger Utah. It's a book on this. It's a series, right? And there are 8 of them now.
Yeah,
Your
so
eighth one.
that's number 8 in my series.
Oh, nice.
The series is called Stranger Bridgerland,
Oh, okay.
but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, they're from yeah. So the
Are they all kind of stories that you picked up through the years, or are they
yeah, they're
okay?
all first person. Some of my criteria is I have to hear it from the person that it came from.
Right, right.
So it has to be first person, and my first book that was a lot harder, but I've been doing this for like 30 years, so it
Okay.
took me quite a while, and I've gotten a lot of stories over that time. So
And
Right, right.
are they all in Utah, or is it just the last book that you have that was in Utah?
just the last book is centralized in Utah.
Okay.
My first couple were kind of in Utah, Idaho, and Wyoming. That's just because I'm in northern Utah. But then as my books got out and the word got out, I started collecting from all over, and I actually collect from all over the world.
Awesome.
My book right before this one is actually called Stranger World, and I have stories
Okay.
from Germany and Australia and
Oh, nice.
Brazil. So
How do you
Oh.
collect these stories? How do you find these people that they just send you stories or
so originally, I had to kind of hunt them down, or there were people that were bringing me stories. What started me in all of this is because I grew up in a house that was built in 1883, and it was very normally active, and
yeah,
I couldn't talk about it. My parents didn't want us to talk about it,
sure.
so I learned all I could. But by the time I was a teenager, my friends were having experiences, and I had to admit, oh yeah, I grew up in a haunted house, and then I started telling my stories at parties and everything. And then I started collecting. People would come to me afterwards and say, "Oh man, this happened to me." And so by the time I was 17 or 18, I was actually collecting. But until my first book came out, it was all me hunting people down, or a few people that brought them to me, or I would hear the story, oh, this happened to my cousin or my uncle, and I would have to hunt it down. But now through my books and through my website, people just kind of bring me stories, which is awesome.
Oh,
Do
that's
you,
awesome.
do you have any way? It's probably kind of hard with different accounts, but do you have any way to vet some of these stories? I'm sure you get some really crazy stories that are like, "This is insane. I can't print this." You know?
I really have to go off my gut,
Yeah,
honestly. It's funny because when I started this, I really didn't think there was some topics in the paranormal that I thought I'll never get a story about this, or because it's so far out there.
yeah,
Yeah.
But it's kind of amazing some of the stories, because I honestly, when I first started a long time ago, I never thought I would ever get a story of what's referred to as the Fae, or that kind of thing. But I ended up getting some stories, and when I talked to the people, the ones that I have published, I got a real sense that they went through something very traumatic, and that they were, telling me, what had
or they
happened to them.
they
So,
believed something. Yeah, okay.
right. Yep.
I
So
gotta say
just
it makes it a lot easier when you see their facial expressions and just how their demeanor is when they're explaining a
yeah,
story, where you can really judge it off that person.
Oh yeah, because it's amazing how many of them tell the story and they're right back there. You know what
yeah.
I mean? And they sometimes they go through the exact same emotions and everything.
Hmm.
And I've had more than one person cry while telling their story, for sure.
Oh,
So
yeah, I'm sure.
They
So,
fully believe it then at that point, it seems like.
yeah,
yeah.
it has some
Which,
authenticity to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So just kind of go back a little bit to when it all started. You said you grew up in obviously an old house, 1883. How old were you when you started having paranormal? When you kind of noticed it and you said, "Okay, this is odd."
I was around 7, 8 years old. Um, we had uh, I my bedroom was upstairs. I shared with my brother, and the footsteps that would happen all the time coming up and down the stairs. That's probably the first thing that I remembered for sure. And um, so it was fairly young that I started, w understanding there was something very off about my house.
Yeah.
And it was, we had footsteps on the staircase or in the hall. We had things that would go missing and then things that would show up that we didn't own, which was really strange, just out of nowhere, or replaced.
Anything good?
Those were really strange things. Yeah. Um, and so, yeah, really early on, I remember trying to talk to my parents about it and my brother and my sister and sharing our stories. But it was funny for a long time. My dad, we couldn't even mention it around dad because he'd get so
Would you get
upset.
angry?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because the biggest fear was that people were going to talk about us and say we were crazy because we thought our house was haunted. So,
Now, did
And
they
then it would travel
experience?
around town.
Now, were they
yeah.
experiencing things too, or was it, they just didn't want to talk about it?
Yeah, so it wasn't until years later that they finally opened up and would tell us that they were having experiences as well at the same time, but they just didn't want to feed our fear or make us be afraid or
Right.
whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it was interesting for sure.
What do you think the craziest thing that happened to you in that house was?
Oh boy, I've had so many experiences in that. I'll tell you one that happened. It's actually in my new book. I usually tell a couple of my stories in my books
Sure.
in the first part. But I remember I'd gotten home from school and it had been raining all day, and it was in the fall, and I grew up being a fisherman as well, so I loved fishing. And when it was raining, I loved it because the fish were biting and nobody else would go out when it was raining. So
Right.
I hurried home from school and come into the house and yelled out for my mom, but nobody was home. So I went to go change my clothes and get ready, and I had somebody or I went up to my room to change, and then I heard my mom yell from the kitchen, you're not going fishing today. And I was like, oh man. So I went back down to the kitchen and mom's not there. Nobody is there still.
Oh wow.
That was the one thing that happened a lot. I like to pretend to be somebody else, like my mother or my dad
Wow.
calling me into her
Right. Right.
room and nobody's there. And so I'm like, well, mom's still not here. That must not have been mom. And so I ran down to the basement where I kept my fishing stuff, and I'm getting ready to go fishing and grabbing my pole. And somebody right in my ear behind me goes, "Do you think you're going fishing?" And I jumped and I turned, and there's nobody in the basement with me.
Oh
And
wow.
I'm just kind of standing there. And then right above the basement is the front room, and then there's a little landing into the sitting room. And I heard footsteps right above me run and jump off the landing and hit right above my head, just really loud. And then some laughter. And so I just grabbed my stuff and left really quick. But it was that kind of stuff, especially when you're home alone,
Yeah.
that it liked to play pranks. It's a huge prankster. My parents still own the house, and so they still have stories coming out from the house all the
So
time. So,
have they ever called anyone in to investigate anything or just to see what was there, or is it just they don't want to get involved with it?
they have allowed a few people to come in, and investigate. It's really interesting because, when people come in to investigate and they'll spend all night, they get a little bit, but not a lot of stuff. It's almost like it doesn't want to perform for people.
Yeah.
Just who they're familiar
They'll
with in
get
a
a
way.
few things, and I've gotten a few things over time. Yeah, yeah, and so I've had a few people get there. What's really interesting is that we would always see this gentleman that we called him the man in the hat because it was a tall, skinny individual with a white shirt and overalls, like a farmer's overalls, and a wide brimmed hat.
Hmm.
And we all had the opportunity to see him every once in a while. And in fact, another time when I'd come home from school and nobody was home, I made myself a sandwich and sat down on the couch. And before I could turn the TV on, I saw something out of the corner of my eye, and I looked, and he walked in, and I could see through him. And he walked in, and across from me was my mom's rocking chair, and he got in the rocking chair and started rocking back and forth. And I closed my eyes really tight. I was in eighth grade at the time, and just counted to 10. And I opened my eyes, and he was gone, but the rocking chair was still rocking. So I jumped up and ran ran out of the house and sat on the front porch until somebody else came home. But what's interesting, because you talk about who it might be in the house, I believe, and a few others that are in the house. But when my grandmother passed away, and she lived in just down the road from us, I was going through some of the old picture books and everything as we were cleaning up her house, and I flipped to a page and I about fell down because there's an old picture of my house, with this gentleman standing in front of the house getting his
Oh,
picture
wow.
taken in that exact outfit. And come to find out, it was a great uncle that owned it in the 1920s. Um, and so
Jeez.
he is one of them that's in there.
So the house has been in
And
the family for a long time.
yeah, since the original owners built it, and then in the 1919 somewhere in there, he bought it with his family and raised his family there. And it's been basically in the family ever since. It's had abandoned for about 10 years before my parents bought it.
Well,
And
did you
then
guys? You never felt like you never felt anger, as in like they're angry at you. It was just you were just uncomfortable with the feeling of not knowing, so they never showed any kind of like anger towards you.
no, never felt any anger, or it never felt any I guess malevolence or evil or anything like that. The biggest thing is that they like to play pranks, or at least one of them really loves
Okay.
to play pranks. So yeah,
Oh, at least that it was like that and not the other way around.
right.
So, I mean,
Right.
but it can also get you into like where you are now. That's what you pursued, these stories with people, and you can connect in a way. So it's actually really nice.
Yeah.
What kind of made you start wanting to put these together and really these stories together and start writing books and stuff like that? Was it just, I know it's kind of later on, you were what you say you were
I
about
I
40 when you,
collected for years.
yeah.
Yeah. So I collected for years, and then about 13 about 12 years ago, I went through a really bad divorce, and I remarried. And my wife, who is still my wife, Annie, I had to admit to her that, yeah, I collect these stories. And she was like, well, what are you going to do with it? And I said, well, I'd like to write a book someday, but I have no idea how. And she really helped me. Like, she's been with me the whole time since, and she's been my editor and helped me. So I really credit her with helping me with that first one and helping with all of them, actually. So
Yeah.
that was the biggest thing. And then once the first one came out, it kind of just snowballed from there, as well, with more people getting a hold of me, and I've been able to write a book every year since. So it's been kind of nice that way.
Wow. So
That's
so
awesome that
being,
you had the support.
yeah. So
Oh
being
yeah,
from
that makes a
northern
world of difference.
so being from
Oh yeah.
northern Utah, you obviously know about Skinwalker Ranch, which is one of my
Mhm.
the most interesting places that that is my bucket list to go
We have
there.
to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, are you into the whole UFO thing too? Do you get involved in that type of stuff? And
Oh yeah, I've collected a lot of UFO stories as well,
oh, okay,
and a lot of stories from around that area as well. It's just the that whole Uinta Mountains and the Vernal area and the Uinta Basin, which is
hmm,
where Skinwalker Ranch is.
right,
It's just really very paranormally active. And so I've got a ton of stories from all over that part, throughout the years. It's really fascinating, and I love that show too. That's one of me and my
yeah,
wife's little um, things that we do every week is sit down and
right,
watch that, because it's just fascinating.
yeah.
That's our go-to as well for Utah. So definitely Skinwalker
How
Ranch.
far is that from where
Yeah.
you live, where your family home
It's
is?
about 2.5, 3 hours,
Okay.
depending. So it's not too far. So
Never felt the urge to just drive over and sit by the gate and just wait, just
and
wait,
asked to
just
come
wait.
in.
Maybe
Right. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I had thought about driving out just to drive past, so because it's such a crazy place. But yeah, in fact, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were camping not too far from there, and I really thought about driving there, and we just didn't end up with time, and I kind of kicked myself for that. So
Yeah, I hear there's guys that I guess camp on kind of side of the road out there. They'll let you camp kind of close to out there. and they just let you camp. And they say every night, man, there's something out there that they can see that is,
Unexplainable.
unexplainable. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
the hunt for the Skinwalker, which the book that came out a long time ago, uh, it's one of my favorite books because, it talks about all the things that they went through war and the people that owned it before and
Right.
just the crazy things that went on. And it's funny too, because some of the things they experienced there, I have interviewed people in and amongst that area who've had very similar experiences. So it's kind of cool that way too.
Yeah. Wow. So I was going through a lot of the stories in your book, and one that really caught my attention was the mimic.
Oh,
The one
yeah.
with the child was he thought he was seeing himself. The guy thought stuff like that. Just
Yeah.
that stuff's crazy to me. I mean that story itself is kind of terrifying if you think about it. For me,
Mhm.
I would question things. But how do you go through all these stories and pick them out and go, man, that's a great story. I'm going to use that one. I'm sure you get tons and tons and tons of stories, but stories like that, I mean, that's a good story. Like that's,
It
I
really
hope it's
is.
true because it's a great
Right.
story.
Yeah. And so I'll go over the synopsis for your viewers. This young man that lived in the Salt Lake Valley, um, when he was growing up, he kept seeing this this entity that looked just like him, only a little bit different. But it was always associated with something really bad that would happen in his family, either a death or something like that. And then he come to find out later on that his because his mom always acted like on his birthday,
Mhm.
she was like kind of happy, but then cried through most of his birthday. And he was
Right.
like that, his whole life. She's like, that is really weird. But he come to find out he had a twin that had died at childbirth that they never told him about. And so his thought was maybe that's what I'm seeing as my twin. And he finally got married and was when he saw it again was freaked out and was able to find some help to find out that the belief, and this is what I kind of told him as well, was the belief is it was obviously it's not his twin because it's some sort of harbinger of horrible things in his life,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
that it's something that's taking that form to torment him, which is it's just like you say, that's a really creepy story, and it's yeah, it's one it's a head scratcher too for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see somebody like that and then immediately you have that feeling like, okay, well, somebody's died now. Because every time I
Hmm.
see this person, something bad happens, somebody dies. That would mess with you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's funny is I've known people throughout my life, and usually it was older people. I don't know anybody that's younger that necessarily has this ability, I guess you'd call it. But I knew several people who would just automatically know when a loved one died without getting, knowing. They would just be like, "Oh my gosh, this
Like an
person just
intuition.
died." Yeah,
Yeah.
an intuition. Like I said, it seemed more with an older generation. And
Mhm.
whether that has to do with the fact that we're always got our phones in our face and we don't
Yeah,
hear
we all have
anything else.
ADHD, I
Yeah.
think now, and
Yeah.
we don't care about anything that's happening outside of our bubble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That
Yeah, I
next
mean that's
dopamine hit is the only thing that's
yeah.
important.
Yep.
So, but yeah, it's pretty amazing. But
Have you ever gone on any ghost hunts or anything like that? Any investigations or
yeah, I we usually get invited, especially around Halloween. We get invited to go with several different groups, and kind of they're really nice to have us come with and
or
talk about our books and then go on the tour with them. And it's some of them have been really fascinating, kind of really cool that we've been able to do here in northern Utah, the
right?
vast majority of them. But yeah.
Do you ever
I've
go
met
traveling to find anyone else that's doing it or investigating, or do you just stick around Utah for it?
I usually stick around Utah. I do, and like I say, I interview people from all over, but I would love to travel. That's there. I've got a bucket list of places,
yeah.
paranormal places I want to visit. So hopefully someday I can maybe do that. So I had with this not the Stranger Utah, but the Stranger World, I
Mm-hmm.
had a hotel that was a a castle in Denmark, and they invited me to come over and do
Wow.
a book signing. But I at the time I just wasn't able to do it, and I was
Yeah.
just kicking myself because I should have found a way to do it. But
Wow, that'd have been
so
great.
hopefully someday.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah.
That'd be great. How many more books you got in you think?
Yeah.
How many more books do
Boy,
you
I
got
don't
in you?
know.
Oh, okay. I don't
I'll
know if
keep
you heard
going
that.
till I can't. So
You
I'll
still
just
get
keep
you still
going
get all
till I
the stories
can't.
coming
So I
in?
think, yeah, I still have quite a few stories coming in. Yeah. I believe I have enough that my next book, I might keep sticking with states because I have a few states that are close by that I have quite a few for now. And then throw in, and then after that one, maybe throw in another one where I'm collecting stories from all over the world that perhaps I can do another world book too as well. So I'll just keep plugging away as long as I can. So
Yeah, I mean that's I need to find out how to get these stories. I love these stories. I love reading books and documentaries about these crazy stories that people have. Um, I probably
yeah,
got
it's
you.
it's and it's funny too because I'll interview somebody about a story. Oh, sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
I must have got a lag there.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think so.
No, yeah, I'll interview somebody and it'll be a story that I think, oh, that was kind of a one-off story. And then when I publish that, I'll have a bunch of people contact me because they thought, oh, I thought I was the only one that had that kind of experience. And one of those that is big like that is um, these stories of kids who um, are there's something that tries to lure them either into the forest or into abandoned buildings,
Sure.
and they look like um an older brother or an older cousin or somebody that they really look up to, and trying to lure them, like I said, either further into the forest or into an abandoned building, only to find out that it wasn't that cousin or wasn't that brother or something. And that was one that, I interviewed a kid who had that experience while camping. Something was mimicking his cousin that was a couple years older than him that he was really looking up to, and tried to lure him away from camp, only to come back to camp and find out his cousin had never left camp. So that was the
Wow.
first one I wrote, and that I got and I wrote. And then it was just amazing there for a while. I was getting a lot of people who were like, I had a very similar experience. And it's kind of crazy that way.
It's weird that
Wow.
they'd get lured in. That like, are they telepathically telling them to come here, or they just have a feeling of it, or is it like, a hand gesture? Is it something where they feel comfortable enough with, moving forward? Like, oh, I know who that is.
Right. Um the vast majority, they never say a word. It's all hand gestures, like,
Okay.
saying, follow me. And for example, the first one that I got from this gentleman, they were playing hide and seek around camp, and he was in charge of seeking. And then all of a sudden, his
Oh,
cousin is near this path that led up this canyon and away from camp, and he was there at the edge of the camp, waving him over. He almost gets to him, and he kind of steps behind a tree, disappears. When he gets to where he was, he's further up the trail, motioning for him to follow. And that goes on several times till he realizes, I'm really far from camp, gets a creepy feeling and just runs down. So it's kind of that kind of thing, not necessarily speaking, but just
yeah.
gesturing for them to follow.
It's weird to think about like how creeped out you'd be, unless. And another thing, like, what if you kept following that person? Where is he leading him to? So it's like
Right.
a weird
Yeah.
situation where you're in.
Hmm.
Anything with kids
Yeah.
is creepy.
Yeah, that's true
Yeah.
too. Well, and I think it's very telling that whatever this creature, um, is is taking the form. It's always taking the form of somebody that they look up to. You
Right.
know,
Okay.
it's somebody that they really have an affinity for. They want to be like. It's usually somebody that's a couple years older than them that they
Yeah.
are familiar with, and so. And then what's interesting too is that I found out not too long ago doing some study that there's actually a tribe of natives in Alaska who have a creature that they talk about that does that very same thing. It mimics people to lure you into the forest. So it's fascinating to find out that there's folklore that is attached to that as well. So
Yeah, Alaska's a crazy place, man. There's so many disappearances and stuff in Alaska every year that, I'm sure people just wander off and just get lost and can't figure out how to get back. But, all the Bigfoot sightings and all that stuff. Like, I'm so into Alaska that it's insane.
Oh, oh yeah, with the aliens, and I mean,
Yeah.
there's the
yeah,
Alaska Triangle that it's actually more people go missing there than they do in the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
So it's like really crazy to think
yeah,
about.
it
Yeah.
really is. And it's just, that was one thing that I've read all the missing 411 books and I've gone through all of that kind of stuff. And it just blows my mind. I think it would blow anybody's mind if they realized the number of people that disappear in the United States. And when I say disappear, meaning under just really weird circumstances where they just like they walked through a door and disappeared. One that
Yeah.
I didn't collect myself, but I read a while ago was crazy. There was a lady and her husband. They were both retired, living in California. He tells his wife, "I'm going to the backyard to mow the lawn." He steps out the back door. She goes, "Oh, I forgot to remind him that we have something going on this evening, whatever." She steps out to talk to him. He's not there. She looks in the garage. He's not there. And 6 years later, nobody has ever seen him again.
Wow.
And he literally walked out the back door and into oblivion. And it's those kind of things that just kind of weird you out. Like, what the
Yeah.
heck is going on out there?
I'm stories aren't more popular with the news or just, we don't really typically hear about those kind of stories. And it's from someone that we hear it from, that we're talking to face to face, but you don't hear about that ever. I wonder if
Yeah.
it's just like a local news maybe might hear it, but like you would
Yeah,
think a lot
probably.
of people would want to hear these things considering how many people actually go missing around those kind of areas.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a place in Idaho not too far from me. It's right along the freeway corridor there. And there is an abnormal amount of teenagers that disappear up there. And of course, you've always got, kids that run away or
Mm.
do this or that and everything like that. But there's a certain number in there that just don't fit the criteria. Like there's no reason that they weren't troubled kids. They weren't, and
Yeah, they
and
weren't
so
into
yeah,
drugs or
I
anything
think
like that.
yeah, it wasn't anything like that. That there was like absolutely no signs, and they just suddenly disappeared one day and are never found. And so yeah, it's really strange. There's some of the things, and who knows what if it's a cult? Is it that's
Yeah.
abducting these kids, or is it paranormal? Who knows?
Well, that's what I think about when I think about like all the disappearances in Alaska. There's something like, I don't know, 16,000 a year or something, some crazy number.
It's
Probably maybe
it's
more
a
than
it's a
that.
high number.
It's
Yeah.
a high number
Yeah,
to that, but maybe some of those people did follow that person in the woods. You know what I mean? Like, I don't
yeah,
know.
You can't like I don't see that many people going missing. I could say bear attacks and like elk, moose, they are huge. I can
Yeah,
see that that's happening, but there is no trail from where like their pinpoint location is from their
yeah,
cell phone if they
and
have
a lot of
service.
times they
They're
never
gone.
find your body. They never find anything. They just
Clothes.
find, yeah. There's some crazy
yeah.
Bigfoot stories about
Well,
how.
and one that stands. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So no, I apologize. One that always stands out to me actually happened here in Utah. And you'll forgive me because I don't remember the names, but the scout group was camping in the Uintas,
Mhm.
and they were actually camping in what's basically a giant bowl. There's a lake there and camping spots, but in order to leave, you have to hike up over a hill either way, So there's no way you can get lost there. And early one morning, a father and son, the son was 12, and his dad was one of the people with him. They were going to walk down to go fishing early before anybody gets up. So they walk down there. It's about 200 yards to the lake from the camp, and you can see the path most of the way, and it's a very heavy path. Well, they go down fishing, and the boy falls in a little bit into the lake and gets his pants wet. And he says, "Can I run back and change my pants and come right back?" And his dad's like, "Yeah, I can see you like 90% of the way." So he watched him go. And then the dad kept fishing and he never came back. So he finally walks back to camp. Nobody in camp has seen him. And They go looking for him, then they call in search and rescue and look for him. And they've never found anything of him, not his fishing pole, not his clothes, not anything. And there's no way he got lost
Right.
because you literally have to hike out and can see the camp from anywhere. It's like a big bowl.
Yeah.
And so that one, even to today, when I think about that one, it just kind of creeps me out of what happened. And like you say, if he was attacked by an animal, there
You'd
would
have
be signs
There'd
of
be
that.
something, sure, yeah.
There'd
Yeah.
be blood, there would be, his clothes. But and if something even grabbed him, he would have dropped his fishing pole, he would have dropped
Yeah.
some of his stuff. There's just nothing.
Well,
And
even
so,
at that, you'd hear yelling. You'd
You
probably
would
hear
think,
yeah,
yeah. I
screaming.
mean, yeah, you would think so.
right, because it wasn't that far.
But you
And
wonder, are there roads around there? Like, so somebody should have just picked him, grabbed him, thrown him up in the back of a truck or something like that, you know? Like,
nope, you have to
Probably
hike
with the
in.
bowl. Yeah, with how
yeah.
the bowl is, you couldn't probably. It's kind
Yeah.
of like probably like I'm guessing like a meteor, like just how
It,
it is, how they
like
hit.
that would look
Yeah.
like, yeah. Yep. Um, and it's just crazy. And it breaks my heart too, because I read an article. This has been, I think it was 2006. And as far
Okay.
as I know, his dad has gone up every weekend he could since then when
Yeah.
the snow was allowed for him to, he's just
Yeah.
even looking for any sign, the body, anything, nothing. And so it's not like they searched and then gave up too. His dad's been looking ever since. So yeah, it's just crazy. Though some of
Those are kind of sad
those
stories right there.
disappearances are just so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's just no, you can't even make up an answer to some of those things. Like, how do you explain it? You know what I mean? You didn't find nothing. There's no scrap of clothing. There's nothing. Like, how do you tell a parent? How do you have that conversation? That's tough, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with I'm just like it'd be so weird to me knowing like how I would say how closed off it is from everything else, considering where you're camping, that there was no shouting, there was nothing. So it's just like
Right.
a gone, the
If
disappearance, quiet.
if a
It
bear's
just
chasing me, everybody's gonna know it. I
yeah,
promise.
and
Yeah.
and that's it. Yeah, like you would hear kicking and
Yeah.
screaming, or they like your instinct would be to run left and right and do like an S
Yeah,
form and
something.
scream, and it's not just like an instant. And there's
The
nothing really like a bear. I mean, you have a little bit of time until they can catch you, but depending what's out
Yeah.
there, I'm not sure of the wilderness out there. But
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have
It's
you ever gotten stories that are just so crazy that I'm never gonna print these? Like, I'm never gonna, they're just either too scary, too wild, too
no, I don't think so. I think some of my craziest stories, um, I've gone off of how the people acted and
yeah.
talked to them and stuff. And and I get a lot of stories that are like start with, well, I saw a ghost, and I'm like, okay,
Right.
we got to really elaborate on this.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I
fine,
saw
go
a
get more
shadow in my
more
kitchen.
detail.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so sometimes I get really simple stuff like that, and I still interview people and everything, but it is uh, of course I want to share the better stories that I don't want to say better, but the one that are
the
kind of
ones
head
that really
scratchers,
Yeah,
grab
make you
yeah,
you,
yeah.
think. Right. And so that's what I kind of focus on, and my wife helps me pick which ones, to put in. And so and I obviously I get a lot more ghost stories than say Bigfoot,
Hmm.
and I get more UFO than say glitches in the matrix or something like that.
Right.
But that's why, I kind of like putting, that's the other ones that I really like are the glitches in the matrix
Yeah,
stories,
I was
just
gonna say
because they're
those
weird.
are really cool. Like, some of the videos that you see, the problem with videos these days is they can almost make them do anything. So it's really tough
Right.
to,
yeah.
like, kind of narrow that down. But some of them you see, you're like, that's just fucking crazy. Like, there's no way that just happened. Like,
Yeah.
and they just
Yeah.
look so real. And like,
And the problem is with like, since we haven't seen it before, how do we know that's not what it looks like on camera? So it could look fake to us,
yeah,
but it's like we
yeah,
don't know
Right.
if that's how it reacts or how it acts.
right.
So it's like you're always stuck
Right.
in that dilemma of that part.
Well, that's what they talk about UFOs. They talk about UFOs. Maybe they can move faster in light. Well, we don't know what that looks like. So we wouldn't, who knows if we can even sense that. The fact that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can know, or like a Bigfoot or paranormal, using a wormhole, or, a interdimensional, two parallel universes coming so close
That's easy.
together to where they blend in. like seeing a ghost. Maybe you're not really seeing a ghost. Maybe it's somebody in their own universe, and we're just so close together in that spot. That's why you have like super haunted areas. Like you'll have one house that's just crazy haunted, and the neighbor doesn't get nothing. I always think about stuff like that. About how where these ghosts might be coming from. Because we've talked about this last week with the guests we had, but if imagine the ghost that you see is in his kitchen, and you just go walking through in your underwear in your kitchen, and you're just a ghost to him.
Exactly.
I think about stuff like that. I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe
Yep.
if you believe in the multiverse theory and all that stuff, and a lot of people are making a case for it, that's plausible as anything else, I guess.
Yeah,
I
that's
would have to
true.
agree.
Yeah.
That's very true. I had one story. It's in one of my first books, of this husband and wife, and they actually worked graveyard. And so they did all their stuff at night when they were off. They would go on walks. They would go, their favorite thing was to go walk around town, and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. But, you know, and they were walking past this downtown. It's called the Tabernacle in Logan, and it's an old building down there. And right before they got to it, they started smelling smoke, which they thought was weird. And as they walked by, there was a fire, and this kid dressed in really old scout uniform, standing next to the fire. And they kind of walked by, and the kid seemed really shocked at seeing them, and they were really shocked at seeing this kid. And then they walked past, and they got down near the end of the block, and they're like, something's wrong about this. Something is really wrong. So, they come back, and the fire's gone. There's no place there where there was a fire. The kid's gone, everything. And it goes a couple months, and he goes to the dentist, and dentist has a bunch of books out, and one of them was pictures of old Cache Valley from the turn of the century or whatever. And he's flipping through, and he sees this picture of where the scouts actually used to camp and have fires out there near the tabernacle.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
so he's like, when he was asking me, he's like, so did I see a ghost? And I said, you know what? I think it's more likely that there was just kind of a rip or something.
Yeah.
And you saw him and he saw you, and you were both, neither one of you were ghosts, but
Equally as surprised.
equally
Yeah,
as
yeah.
surprised. Yeah. So
He was just minding those business, and you walked up on him.
I would
Yeah.
like to think that's how it happens, because if that's just, I think that's how it would happen. We just see a glimpse of it, and they do too.
Yeah.
Same time.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that does happen sometimes, and people assume it's a ghost. I do think there are actually ghosts too, but I think sometimes it could be just that simple thing where
Yeah.
something's bumping against each other, and you're seeing through a window that you wouldn't normally see. And I tell people I consider them very lucky,
Oh yeah.
because that would be, sometimes they have scary stories, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And like, no, you're crazy. That was not cool. It was scary. No.
I have a friend he says his house is haunted, but he won't let me go there and like check it out. But he swears up and down. I'm like, you gotta let me come. You gotta let me come and see this. I
Are we
got
talking
ghost
about
hunting
Taylor?
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have ghost hunting equipment. I want to go and check this out.
I think Taylor's more like, he's not accepting. He knows it's there, but he doesn't
He doesn't
want
want
to
to poke the
with
bear.
it. He does. That's
That's
exactly
what it is.
And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I get it. But
No, not me. I would do it. I would poke the bear. My
It's-
daughter's always been into this kind of stuff. So she's going to college in San Antonio. So I would go and visit her. Actually, I just went over there a couple weeks ago, and we always stay in haunted hotels. And she's in San Antonio. There's plenty of haunted hotels, and most of them are right near the Alamo. So all the old hotels are like old hospitals for the Alamo. So they all have crazy horror stories, about the terrible things that
Yeah.
they saw. So I had my EMF meter out, and we stayed in one of the rooms of the Manger Hotel, which is literally right next to the Alamo. And so we were just messing around, and we had the little cat balls that light up if anything touches them or whatever. And we had the EMF reader out sitting on the counter, and it was just doing nothing. And she started reading stories about, ghosts of this hotel that she found online. And she found one story of a girl that died. I guess her husband stabbed her outside, and they brought her in, and 2 days later she died on the third floor of the Manger Hotel. It was a hospital at the time, I think. So we were staying on the third floor, which is kind of coincidental, but the girl's name was Sally, and I swear I haven't seen very many paranormal things in my life, I don't think, but every time she read her name, the EMF reader would go off every single time, just like clockwork.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, this is the craziest shit I've ever
Wow.
seen. And that's like the extent of my paranormal activity, but it was pretty cool, and it kind of got me hooked to keep wanting to go around and check stuff out.
Yeah, I've got a list of hotels that I would love to go and visit with. I just have to talk my wife into it. She's not
Yeah.
quite as scary, adventurous like that I
You don't want to
am,
have
but
something attached to you and bring it home.
no,
So it's like,
definitely
yeah.
not. Definitely not. One of my favorite stories that I got um was in a hotel. This guy was actually working on the third floor, the third or fourth floor. They were remodeling it, and he was up there doing some work, and he just started getting a really creepy feeling. So he's like, I'm gonna go down and have some dinner. He was working later. He's like, I'm gonna go have some dinner and try and get this out. And he got on this elevator, and it's kind of a famous elevator for this hotel. It has mirrors on both sides, so it's kind of got that infinity look going on
Sure.
both sides of him. And he gets in the elevator and pushes for the bottom floor. And he just gets, he's just got more and more of a creepy feeling. And so he just looks to turn to look at himself, but the the his image in the mirror didn't look back. It kept
Wow.
looking forward.
Oh man.
Yeah,
And so he
that's
turned and he's looking at himself, but he's not looking back at himself. And he by the time it hit the bottom floor, he ran out of the building. So it
see
was he
that
was so
see that's
scared.
creepier to me than like if I would have turned around and saw somebody else standing behind me. You know what I mean? In the mirror. Like just
Right.
seeing my reflection not move. No,
Yeah.
that'd be tough to
Yeah.
swallow.
Yeah, that would be one that you're just like, oh yeah. Even talking about it, I'm like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, just I don't know how you would. I don't know how I would handle that. I mean, I couldn't get to
Yeah.
the bottom fast enough. That's for sure.
Oh
No.
I'd
yeah.
take the stairs wherever I was going.
No, knowing you that the
I think we lost him. Did
lights
we
would
lose
just
him?
go
Oh,
off
there
and
we
you'd
go.
be stuck in the elevator for like 20
Oh
minutes.
yeah, the elevator
So,
would
yeah.
just stop and I would just be stuck there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's your luck when it comes to that. Yeah.
No,
It
you're right.
is. Yeah,
You're
that
right.
is.
The
Oh,
only other
that
the
would
only
be
other thing that I
scary.
really had that happened was we went to a we went on a ghost tour in St. Augustine, and we were at a cemetery where the report is that two kids play in the cemetery. I guess they died and they were laid to rest there. And we were all taking pictures, and they say just keep taking pictures and go home and review the pictures, and you can see whatever. So we did that, and we got back to the hotel room, and it was pretty uneventful. I was in the shower. I get out of the shower, and she's like, "You gotta come see this. You gotta come see this." And I looked at our camera, and there were two like green. They looked like mist, but it was kind of obvious that they were kids. You know what I mean? It's hard to
Oh,
explain without seeing it, but it was kind of obvious. I'm like, that looks like two kids sitting by the headstone. And I had the same camp picture on my phone, but it was nothing on it. And I'm like, that's pretty creepy. And nobody else got that shot but her. And it's literally just two. I mean, it looks like two children sitting by a headstone, and
wow.
stuff like that is, I don't know, it keeps me going.
Yeah.
I've yet to have any experience like that, so I'm just waiting for the day where I'm like, this is it. But it hasn't
Yeah.
happened. I mean, I've traveled like growing up, we went like my grandparents lived near like Eagle River and Land O'Lakes and like Wisconsin, Michigan area. And they have a thing called the Paulding Light. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it's a ghost light and it's
I
about
think I have, yeah.
yeah, a guy was holding a lantern calling over an engineer for the train and it ran him over. A lot of people say he got murdered, but that light's still there and we went there. It's the only thing I ever saw was the light. So, but
Oh,
it's still
cool.
there. I mean, you can travel miles and it's still in front of you. You can never get to
And
it.
you can
And
never
it
get
was
to the
that
light, right?
you can never get to it. And it's actually been on a couple ghost shows and they can never get to the light.
Wow.
Yeah, the
That's
Paulding Light in
crazy.
Upper Michigan. It's actually a cool one to read about.
Yeah, they have one on Brown Mountain in North Carolina. They had kind of the same story where they have just lights that no one can find. Like they can't find the origin of them. They just keep appearing every night.
And the only other one we got creeped out as a kid, it was in where I lived in Bull Valley in Illinois. It's called the Stickney House. George Stickney owned it, and he built a house with no corners inside of it. Now it's the police station, but it's a haunted police station. And you can actually go there and it's really creepy. Like I went inside of it and there every corner is all rounded off. because he believed that spirits and demons were hiding inside the corners. And
There's
I
a
believe
few houses that I've seen like that. That
it's actually a really cool story behind it. You can look it up, the Stickney House in Bow Valley.
I'll have to
But
look that up. I haven't heard of that one. That's cool. I'm always looking for another cool story. So
Yeah.
that would be cool to
it's
read
one to look
about.
into.
So
Oh yeah, it's a little disturbing, but it's a good read. And I lived right next to it. It's
oh
like
wow.
it was like four houses down.
Oh
So
wow. That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah, it's
That's
pretty
very
cool.
cool.
yeah, I'm always looking for a haunted house to go to.
Yeah. And the thing is that
Yeah.
police station, it's a small it's a smaller town in Bow Valley. But they'll let you go right inside. Like, and they'll tell you the story about it, and like people take pictures of it and all that. Get all the
Oh,
pictures
that's
they need.
cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, we've
That's
done
very
all.
cool. I love places where they turn, they're okay and they turn into it,
Sure.
and then there's a lot of places they're like, oh no, no, that doesn't go on here. And you're like, okay, sure it
I
doesn't.
think it's
So,
become a little more mainstream to where people kind of lean into it a little bit more, and yeah, it's haunted, cool. Come check it out.
yeah.
Yeah. Back then it was like
there's less of a stigma. It's kind of like the UFO thing now. It's getting a little bit less of of a bad rap. If back in the '60s, if you said you saw a UFO, you were locked up.
you're going to the
Yeah,
back up. That's what it was.
now people are like, oh, cool, or they, you're full of shit or whatever,
Right.
but they don't lock you up anymore. So it's getting there. It's getting to where we can talk about these things. But
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I like how the UFO is more okay to talk about, I guess, in mainstream. And so,
yeah, I mean, they're having
and when the
congressional
government was
hearings
like,
about
oh,
them.
right, they're like, oh, the government's like, yeah, you know, we we know about them. And then I talk to my friends. I'm like, did you see that? And they're like, yeah, that was yeah. And I'm like, that was so cool, guys. Don't you
Yeah,
get it?
that's the way I
I
get.
It
guess.
I watched every second of the hearings, the congressional hearings, like glued to the set. I couldn't. I had to
yep.
watch the whole thing. I could not watch it.
And I think, like, my personal opinion, they're just numbing people to what's happening. And so people are like, it's just another thing they see, like on Facebook. They're
Yeah,
gonna scroll,
maybe.
oh, that's cool. Like,
Yeah,
and they'll eventually just keep seeing it where when something happens, they're like, oh, we already know. And no one's
Yeah.
freaking out. You know what I mean? So I
yeah.
think that's
It's
slowly happening.
it's the whole frog in the pot thing. And they're
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
gonna throw us into a boiling pot. They're just gonna warm it up until
Yeah,
we're all good and
Yep.
cooked.
absolutely.
So,
So the book comes out
but
today.
that's awesome.
Is it
Yeah,
today
it
when
actually
comes
came out today. Yep. So it's available on Kindle, Softback, and Audible today. So
Oh, nice.
Awesome. I'm a huge
yep,
Audible guy. So like while I work with my hands. So I listen to Audible constantly.
that's me
So
too. Yeah, I have to have something in my ear when I'm
Yeah.
working. Back
I'm the
to that
same way.
ADHD thing.
Yeah.
I have ADHD, so I'm like,
Right. Yeah.
if I don't have something in my ear, I just can't focus, and that's weird. I know my wife thinks I'm crazy for that, but
Yeah,
Sure.
I do the same thing all day. I'll just put it on Audible and I'll just continuously a new story. So it's actually really nice that it's on Audible.
no,
Absolutely.
very nice.
Well, John, thank you so much for spending some time with us today and telling us your stories and talking about your new book. Should go buy it, everybody. I read, you sent it to me today, and you messed up my whole day because then I sat down and started reading it, and I'm like, damn it, I can't put it down now. I'm like, I think I'm almost all the way through. I
Yeah.
think I got a couple more
Oh,
stories left. I'm like, but
oh, gotcha. Well,
it's great, man. It's captivating. I love reading about them. Anybody that loves ghost stories should check it out for sure.
awesome.
It's called Stranger Utah. Where by all means pick it up. It's awesome.
Thank
John,
you guys so much for
no
having me
problem.
on.
Thanks for
You're
coming
welcome.
on. And
Thank you.
next book, come back and we'll do another one.
You bet.
All right, but thank you so much, John Olsen. We will see you next time.
Thank you.
All right, sounds good.
All
Bye.
right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.